Got the PGA 57, about 3 fingers away from the snare, pointing at the center. And then we have just a PGA 81 above it, kind of in the center of the kit, about 40 inches away from the snare. Another PGA 81, 40 inches from the snare down low by the floor tom. And then a PGA 52 kick drum microphone. We have that inside the kick drum, real close to the batter head to get a nice click out of it. And that's our entire mic setup. All right. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about the Glyn John miking technique. I saw this technique somewhere on YouTube a couple weeks ago, and it's intrigued me ever since. Had some homies over that were practicing today. I just kind of got in their way and mic'd up their drummer. He's an absolutely insane drummer, but wanted to really test out this technique. Just 4 microphones, like we said in the setup. So we're going to be trying to get our tom sound out of the overheads. Excuse me. Probably just break down it piece by piece and then talk about how you could use this in an actual record or something. But let's just hear how it sounds like right out of the gate. We have processing happening, but there is a guitar player playing while it's obviously a practice session, so. Pretty cool sound. Let's just kind of talk about our processing. On some of these, it might look like a lot is happening, but each move is imparting just a small ingredient in the overall picture of things. So if you look at this kick here, it looks like we got a whole army of plugins going. But as you'll see, some of these are doing very similar moves, just in small stages. Did a slight amount of transient designing on our kick-in microphone. It had a lot of sustain. I wasn't a big fan of that, so I just cut that out. Did some analog preamp emulation just to make that mic a little more lively. Cut out some mids, some lower mids, boosted some high mids. I think on this next one we did a similar move. Cut out some more mids. Boosted a very slight, very specific frequency, and we're cutting some other subs. Using Saturn. This is a saturation plugin, but it also has a built-in noise gate. It allows you to target very specific frequency ranges, which I love. So if you look at this dynamics knob here, that is our gates. And on these 2 frequency bands, I'm gating pretty heavily. Not gating as heavily on the low end because it's our kick. Cutting out even more low end at 60 hertz on this Pultec style EQ. Doing another gate, but we're only targeting 1K and above, just to help cut out some of that cymbal bleed. And then we are doing another stage of saturation just as some final beef. Also have a snare or kick trigger that we could bring in here. This is what that would sound like with that. And then without it. It's just adding some very slight. That probably sounds weird, that room emulation happening. Let's try that again. So without it. And then with it. Just adding some slight top end information. It's not necessary. This is what it sounds like without it in the full context. And then with it. Again, not necessary. It's just something that's useful if you want some more attack. I found that emulating high end, or supplementing high end is easier than supplementing low end. I think I said that backwards. Supplementing low end is higher than supplementing high end. In our overhead tracks, one was in the center of the kit, and then one was down low, equal distant from the snare as the top one, but it's over by the floor tom and china. Pretty close to what the floor tom is actually sitting at height-wise. And that's going to be kind of how we're trying to capture the toms. So if we solo this overhead track here. Does a pretty good job of capturing the toms. They're not like super in your face. Obviously, they're not close mic'd. But it's still does a pretty good job of capturing them. Overheads were pretty simple. I just did some slight gating on 160 to 400 just to try to get that that snare to duck a little bit in the overheads. Targeted some specific areas to try to tame up, again, the snare, some of this high end. Pretty sure this is just our analog console emulation. Oh, it's not. Well, that definitely should be on there. Let's go ahead and add that. Oh, hold on. I messed up. Let's bring that back. Will it not let me? Oh, well, we're fine. I'm almost positive I have our analog emulation. Yep, our analog emulation is directly on the overhead track here. Overhead did a pretty good job of capturing the whole kit. This is what our snare sounds like in isolation. Without any plugins or anything. And then with. We did some transient shaping, slight amount of attack added, quite a bit of sustain added. Our analog emulation. Saturn again to gate out some of that cymbal bleed. Boosting some low end, very specific frequency, and then it's also dipping right after that. It's a good way to fatten up the snare. And then we're doing another stage of gating on this multi-band. We're targeting 1K and above to also gate out some of that cymbal bleed. One cool trick I like to do with live snares is we will add a snare trigger. I'm using trigger 2, the free version. And I am absolutely cranking the tuning of this as high as it'll go. And it's going to sound silly by itself, but let's hear what that sounds like. And the way I have it set up is that whenever he does snare rolls and stuff, the trigger is supposed to not turn on, just to keep those fills feeling natural. And then I compress the ever-living shit out of it. We gated some of that cymbal bleed out that we were getting from the original. And then with that blended in, it's kind of what it sounds like. I'll start without it. And then with it. Bring that room back in. It's pretty cool. And then we have not even sure if we've discussed the room yet. I don't think we have. Let's bring these all back up so it's nice and organized. So yeah, for the kick, overheads, and snares, we just did some analog emulation to kind of warm up those microphones. Cut and boosted specific frequencies. Did a lot of gating to negate bleed from other microphones. And then we are busing that to a sum bus of the entire kit. We are cutting some sub information on this drum bus. We are doing some gentle compression here, not even really hitting 4. Just to help glue the whole kit together. And then I have a gray compressor here to just kind of help duck that snare when it gets too hot. You'll notice this really peaks down when that snare hits. There we go. That's how it's supposed to be working. I love Tanner. He's such a good drummer. It's pretty simple. In terms of bus processing, we're just cutting out some sub information, running it through 2 different bus compressors, one to help glue it all together and one to kind of duck that snare, so we can have it nice and loud and fat, but then we can pull it down to kind of be level with the rest of the drums. We are then sending this audio to the room track. So if I turn off all of these plugins, you will notice here in a second. If I solo this room track and play this with all the plugins bypassed, it's just the audio from our drum bus. It's unaffected. And then if we bring this in, this is kind of what we're working towards. And what I'm trying to do here, cutting out some low end because I don't want that kick drum and that room sound. We've already got plenty of low end from the original kick. You already saw we were cutting out a bunch already. So we don't want to add any more low end. This room is going to help thicken up the drums and also make it sound a little bit more like it's actually in a fucking room. But we're cutting out lows because we don't want that. I'm doing a oak room simulation using this SSL reverb. You could arguably use any reverb plugin for this, just as long as it kind of gives you a room feel. Doing some gating moves, just to help also, again, cut out some of that cymbal bleed. We are compressing it. And we're just getting a tiny, tiny bit of compression. After that compression, though, it brought in quite a bit of low end, so I just brick-walled this high pass here. I saw that if I mute this, you can see our snare is hitting right around 220. So everything below 220 was just getting completely cut out. And then this is without it. And then with it. Helps really lift it up, give it some sustain. We are also sending our drum bus audio. Like I said, we're sending it to the room. We're also sending it to a parallel track called Drum PC, which is this top one here. And that is a very simple move. We are just using a distressor compressor. You can use any compressor plugin, but we are just absolutely squashing the dynamics. So this is what that sounds like soloed. We're hitting up to 20 dB of gain reduction. Kind of middle of the road in terms of speed on our attack. We're doing a relatively fast release. And we're using the nuke option, which is just absolutely squashing our transients. If I play this without that, you can see it sounds good, but it doesn't sound massive. with it. Really, really beefens it up. This was a really cool technique. If you're limited to 4 microphones and you're trying to record metal, this is entirely viable. I'm glad I got to try it out today. Probably gonna be making more videos on drum techniques in the future. But yeah, this was a fun one. Have a good one.